Hey, what's up, guys? Just wanted to show a quick couple of videos maybe about the system architecture that we're working on when it comes to designing how game objects are going to interact with each other within our game. So a lot of consideration needs to be done with this ahead of time so that everybody kind of understands how the game works when if multiple people are going to be um, kind of working together on the architecture and getting, I guess, the design of the game working. So I guess a lot of it is scripting, obviously with code, but there are quite a few really good tools now that allow you to do visual scripting. Visual scripting in Unity and other game engines is really popular now, and it allows you to, with literally no code, you can hook up objects and give them behaviors and pretty much do whatever you would need to do. You can build a whole game using either this one, Bolt, or Playmaker is the other one. Uh, so uh, what I've found is that Unity has provided some really great tools in scriptable objects that if you have a couple good programmers on your team, you can design a custom system like this that everybody can use if they get to understand it. So I want to go over just like I said, a couple things. First thing I'm going to go over is scriptable objects as variables and how we use scriptable object variables to connect objects together or reference common data between two objects without without them actually referencing each other. So the reason that I want to talk about this now is because the game is at a point where we are going to have to look at game state and managing the state of the game, what like main menu state versus uh, character customization state, or playing racing state, and being able to go back and forth between those states and track the behavior of multiple different objects. And in other past projects, this gets very complex very quickly for coders and designers to kind of keep track of what's going on in the scene. So the earlier the better when it comes to defining kind of a set standard about how we're going to go about doing that with our project. So yeah, this will be about, like I said, variables, scriptable objects as variables. And so I have a demo scene here. I just want to show how scriptable object variables can uh, remove the dependencies between objects. So I have two cubes in here that have a follow transform script on them, and you give it, this was the traditional way that you would say, I want these objects to follow a position in in the scene within some other game object. So that's really all this script does is you take the target object and you drop it into the script on each of the objects that need it, and then when obviously the script uses that to update its behavior. So really all this does is it just follows wherever that transform is. So super simple. But the problem is, like, say if I wanted this cube, I want to reuse this cube many times, and I don't want it to be coupled to this specific object. So in this situation, I have dropped this actual object's reference onto onto there, and they're coupled together. So if I were to say I want to make a prefab out of this, so I've got this cube object, and now it's got no follower. So if I were to start with a blank scene, and I were to drag this guy in, then I have nothing to follow, and I have to set the whole thing up again if I have a new scene, and drag and drop this again into here before before it'll work. So that that creates this it creates a coupling between while I'm in the scene, I save this scene. If I were to want to use this behavior in some other scene, I would need to, or if I wanted to follow a different object, then I would need to modify this reference. So let me show how we can solve this problem using scriptable variables. I guess I'm going to call them scriptable variables, but they're really just scriptable objects, and they're used as variables. So here's one. This is just a script that defines a scriptable object, and inside it, it's just got one called one property called value, and that is a transform. So what we can do with this is we can create an asset in the project. It's not in a scene. We'll create an asset. Just right click here and go to create. And I have a menu here for all the different types of scriptable variables that you can make. So I'm going to make a transform. I'm going to say pursuit target. So this specific asset is the target that is a transform. Inside of it, it's got a transform that will always be on this asset, whether it's in the scene or not, and it's accessible to all objects in the scene and really in the whole engine. So then I'm going to go back to this script, the follow transform script. So right now this is kind of hard coded to being just a transform that I have to drag and drop in. But if I change that to a transform variable, and instead of going directly to the position, I do value.position. So that's going to give me the reference to that transform. Then in my scene, the cube, instead of referencing the sphere, I'm now going to reference that transform variable that I just created. So then I'm going to apply that, and so my I don't know where my prefab went. Anyway, let's create it here again. So now my prefab is, no matter what, if I were to remove these from the scene, then if I put a new one in, you see even as an asset, it keeps that reference no matter what. So now what I need to do is, I mean, it's not going to follow anything because that pursuit target is set at 0, right? It's not been assigned, right? So it's actually giving errors because this transform value has never been assigned to. So that now we just need to assign a variable into that, and we can do that by creating. We'll create a script here for setting the pursuit target, and we're going to also have a transform variable, and in my awake I want to set the target.value is equal to my transform. Okay. I'm not sure why I'm getting a interesting error here. So then if I assign that to the sphere, and I also assign that same pursuit target to the sphere, now they're both coupled to the pursuit target variable, but they're not coupled to each other. So but you should still get the same behavior, but the cube does not rely on the sphere. Um, it just wants to get that variable. So say I don't want to follow the sphere. I wanted to follow a different object. So say I want to follow the cylinder. Then all I do is I could have set this up to be um, the same way as a prefab, and he will follow. It'll follow no matter what. It's going to use that same target. So again, this creates a decoupling of the actual, physical game objects within the scene, so that you can work with them independently. And this is really useful for common things like this. If you want to have one target, that it might be one object now, but then you might have some other script or an event that changes it to be the second object. So you don't want to have to go to every object that is pursuing that target and change their pursuit target, right? So say I had 16 cubes and they all were set to the sphere, and then I wanted to change it all of a sudden to the cylinder. I would have to have some other script that goes through and finds all of the cubes and then changes all their targets. But with this, I have one variable. I have one reference that all I need to do is change the value of that one reference, and then anything that is referencing that value would just instantly get updated. So yeah, that's one use of one of the greater uses of these variables, and there's obviously multiple different kinds of them. You can use integers or strings. Again, it's useful for like health values or score. If you want to be able to track the score of the game, multiple game objects might be interested in the score, or character configuration, like their inventory, what's in a player's inventory. You can have a scriptable object would probably take care of that instead of just a variable, but that's really what a scriptable object. These are just single variables within scriptable objects. You could create a scriptable object that has 15 different integer values in it that that shows which items are in the player's inventory, and then every game object in the scene would just reference that one single inventory object, and you wouldn't need to provide some sort of global manager or anything like that to manage the references between the two. So yep, that's my bit on scriptable variables, and I'll probably make another video about like events and systems. Thanks.